Welcome back, brave souls. Imagine stepping off a ship onto a distant, untamed shore in 1587 with dreams of starting a new life in the unknown wilderness of America. This was the reality for the settlers of Roanoke, the colony that history would later call the first great American mystery. Families arrived full of hope, their children clinging to their hands, their eyes wide with both wonder and fear. They carried with them the promise of freedom, land, and a future far from the rigid confines of England, but they could not have anticipated the darkness that awaited them. The island itself was beautiful, yet wild and unforgiving. Dense forests stretched in every direction, birds sang in the high branches, and the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore masked a lurking danger. Supplies were limited. Food was scarce, and the settlers quickly realized that survival here would demand more than courage. It would require every ounce of wit and resilience they possessed. John White, the colony's governor, oversaw the settlers' arrival. He documented everything meticulously: sketches of the island, maps of their small encampment, notes about the land and the native peoples. Yet even with his careful observation, a shadow hung over the colony. Something was amiss. Some settlers spoke of eerie noises at night, footsteps in the trees, strange whispers carried on the wind. Others claimed to see flickering lights beyond the forest, like ghostly lanterns guiding or warning them. The colony's first weeks were a mixture of hope and fear. Children fell ill, livestock disappeared, and tension rose among the adults. One settler wrote in a letter back to England, "The land is fertile, yet a heaviness clings to it, as if it waits, watching for us to fail." Yet despite their hardships, the colonists persevered, building homes, clearing fields, and forging uneasy alliances with the local Native American tribes. But history has a cruel way of turning dreams into nightmares. Before long, the settlers would begin vanishing one by one, leaving behind a silence so deep that it would echo through centuries. The first hints of a mystery were carved into trees: a single word, CROATOAN. A clue? A warning? Or a sign of something far more sinister? Before we continue with the story and unspeakable secrets, I want to ask something important. This channel is not for everyone. Only the bravest souls who dare to confirm the darkest chapters of American history. If you made it this far, you are not like most people. You understand some truths are too horrifying to ignore, no matter how much they disturb us. So hit that subscribe button and join our community of true mystery seekers. And tell me in the comments, what state are you listening from? Are you brave enough to hear a story like this from your own backyard? Next, we will uncover the settlers' first winter, where the true horror of isolation and fear began to tighten its grip on Roanoke. As the first frost settled over Roanoke Island, the settlers realized that the new world was far harsher than they had ever imagined. The air carried a biting chill, and nights were long, silent, and foreboding. Families huddled together in makeshift homes, their breath clouding in the cold, their stomachs aching from limited rations. Each day was a struggle, clearing the land, hunting for food, and repairing fragile shelters against the unrelenting wind and rain. Supplies from England, meant to sustain them through their first winter, were delayed. Weeks stretched into months, and tension began to simmer among the settlers. Arguments erupted over food, shelter, and leadership. Some whispered that the land itself was cursed, that the island's dense forests hid unseen eyes watching their every move. Strange shadows seemed to follow them across the trees, and the settlers reported eerie sounds at night: branches snapping without wind, distant whispers, and the low howl of unknown creatures. Children were particularly vulnerable. Fever and illness spread through the colony like wildfire, and the settlers lacked proper medicine or knowledge to treat them. Parents prayed desperately, clutching their sick children and watching the flickering candlelight dance against the walls, unsure if the darkness beyond the windows was merely night or something far more sinister. Even Governor John White, a man known for his calm and meticulous nature, felt the pressure mounting. He recorded in his journal the fear etched into every face. "We came seeking a home, yet each night brings a terror we cannot name. I fear the land itself conspires against us." Some settlers began to question their decision to leave England. Had they been foolish to chase the promise of a new world, or had fate destined them for tragedy from the start? Despite the harsh conditions, the colonists persevered. They cultivated crops, hunted game, and sought to maintain morale. They also tried to maintain relationships with the nearby Native American tribes, though mistrust lingered on both sides. The winter was a test, and every day they survived seemed like a small victory, but each night brought new fear, new uncertainty. It was during this first winter that the first unsettling signs appeared. Tools went missing, cabins were mysteriously ransacked, and some settlers vanished for hours, only to return shaken and silent, refusing to speak of where they had been. The air seemed heavier, filled with whispers and unspoken dread. Some began to suspect that the island itself was hiding secrets too dark to name. Next, we will explore the settlers' uneasy relationships with the local native tribes, where alliances, betrayals, and a growing fear of the unknown begin to intertwine, threatening the very survival of Roanoke. As the harsh winter receded, the settlers of Roanoke faced a new challenge, navigating relationships with the local Native American tribes. The island was not uninhabited, and the colonists quickly realized that survival depended as much on diplomacy as it did on hunting and farming. Yet these alliances were fragile, built on mutual necessity rather than trust. Some tribes offered food and guidance, teaching the settlers which crops could thrive and which areas of the forest were dangerous. Others remained wary, observing the newcomers with cautious suspicion. Tensions rose when misunderstandings occurred: misplaced tools, accidental trespasses, or the taking of livestock. Every small incident carried the weight of potential disaster. One settler noted in a letter, "We are strangers in their world, and their eyes see all. A misstep could mean death." Among the settlers themselves, suspicion also grew. Isolation had frayed nerves, and fear made them look for enemies everywhere. Some whispered that certain colonists were secretly sabotaging the colony, hoarding food, or hiding letters from England. The harshness of the environment amplified paranoia. At night, strange noises in the forest, snapping twigs, distant chanting, flickering shadows, only fueled their anxiety. Was it a message from the natives, or something far more mysterious lurking in the woods? Governor John White tried to mediate, urging calm and caution. He believed that careful diplomacy and reason could prevent conflict, but he also documented unsettling occurrences: missing children who returned hours later pale and silent, tools vanishing from storage, and livestock disappearing without explanation. Many settlers began to believe that the island itself had a will of its own, a force that either punished them or tested their resolve. Despite the tension, some bonds were formed. Settlers learned huntais, techniques and foraging strategies from the tribes. In return, the colonists offered goods brought from England: metal tools, cloth, and trinkets. These exchanges were vital for survival, yet the shadow of distrust never fully lifted. Each day brought small victories, but each night seemed to deepen the unease, as if the island were watching and waiting for the moment it could strike. By the end of the first summer, a delicate balance had formed: fragile alliances, lingering fear, and a growing sense that the colony teetered on the edge of disaster. The settlers' resilience would soon be tested in ways no one could anticipate, as supply ships from England failed to arrive, leaving them increasingly isolated. Next, we will reveal the first delayed supply shipment and the rising desperation that would mark the beginning of Roanoke's most mysterious chapter. A chapter where disappearances and eerie signs began to plague the colony, hinting at a fate that history would never fully explain. By the end of the first year, the settlers of Roanoke faced a crisis that would push them to the brink. Supplies from England, meant to arrive regularly, were delayed indefinitely. Storms, piracy, and the sheer distance of the Atlantic had conspired against them. Food stores dwindled, tools wore out, and the settlers began to fear that survival itself was slipping through their fingers. Governor John White, who had returned to England to gather reinforcements and supplies, faced a delay of 3 long years before he could return. Meanwhile, the colonists were left to fend for themselves in an unfamiliar and unforgiving land. Crops failed due to poor soil, livestock perished, and harsh weather compounded the colony's struggles. Families huddled together, rationing what little they had, knowing that each day was a battle against hunger, exposure, and fear. The psychological toll was equally severe. Settlers reported nightmares, shadowy figures moving through the forest, and mysterious sounds at night. Children disappeared temporarily, only to return pale, silent, and shivering. Some settlers began to believe that the island itself was haunted, that some unseen force was testing their endurance or punishing them for daring to settle here. Tensions grew among the colonists as desperation set in. Arguments over rations and leadership erupted. Some whispered about abandoning the colony entirely, while others insisted that they must remain, no matter the cost. Suspicion spread like wildfire. Neighbors accused one another of hoarding food, hiding letters from England, or even conspiring with the local tribes to sabotage the settlement. Fear had turned the small community into a powder keg, and it seemed that any spark could ignite catastrophe. Amidst this turmoil, strange signs began appearing that would forever haunt the history of Roanoke. Trees bore carvings, letters, and symbols whose meaning was unclear. One of the most famous was the word CROATOAN, etched deep into the bark of a fence post. Was it a clue, a warning, or a record of a new settlement? No one knew. It became the first tangible mystery pointing to the colony's impending fate. Despite the growing despair, some settlers tried to keep hope alive. They maintained gardens, reinforced shelters, and kept meticulous journals. But each passing day without supplies brought them closer to the edge. The combination of harsh elements, isolation, and fear was beginning to erode not only their physical strength, but also their sense of security, unity, and sanity. Next, we will explore the chilling disappearances and the first signs that the entire colony might vanish, leaving only cryptic clues behind, a mystery that would puzzle historians for centuries. As months stretched into years without relief from England, the sense of dread among the Roanoke settlers deepened. Families lived in constant uncertainty, haunted not only by hunger and harsh weather, but by a growing fear that something far darker lurked in the shadows. And then, the unthinkable began. People started disappearing. It began subtly. A child would vanish for hours, only to return pale and silent, unable or unwilling to explain where they had been. Livestock went missing, tools disappeared from storage, and some settlers reported hearing whispers carried on the wind, voices that seemed almost human but distorted, impossible to trace. Each incident chipped away at the colonists' nerves, heightening suspicion and paranoia. No one knew whether the threat was human, natural, or something altogether unearthly. Governor John White, absent from the colony during this period, documented the growing unease in letters sent back to England. Settlers left cryptic notes and carvings in the woods, and rumors spread of people vanishing while gathering firewood or tending crops. The tension was palpable. Even those who had once trusted their neighbors began to eye each other warily. Fear, after all, is contagious, and in Roanoke, it spread faster than the colony could contain. The most famous clue appeared during this period, a carving on a post or tree bearing the word CROATOAN. Its meaning was unclear. Some believed it indicated a nearby settlement where survivors had fled. Others whispered that it was a warning or a sign of impending doom. Whatever its purpose, the carving became the first tangible link in a mystery that would endure for centuries. Stories emerged of strange nocturnal sightings, shadowy figures moving between cabins, lights flickering in the forest, and the faint sound of distant drums or chants that none of the settlers could explain. Some of the Southeast colonists speculated that the local tribes were behind the disappearances, while others feared that the island itself was cursed, conspiring to claim them one by one. By the end of this dark period, the colony had transformed from a hopeful settlement into a community gripped by fear and suspicion. Families clung to each other, aware that survival was no longer guaranteed. The disappearances, the strange signs, and the eerie atmosphere all pointed toward a terrifying truth. Roanoke was slipping into the shadows of history, destined to leave behind only questions and mysteries. Next, we will examine John White's desperate return journey to the island, where he would confront the haunting evidence of the colony's fate, and the chilling emptiness that greeted him would leave a mark on history forever. After 3 long, agonizing years, Governor John White finally returned to Roanoke Island in 1590. He had crossed the treacherous Atlantic, braving storms and hostile waters, carrying hopes of reuniting with the settlers he had left behind. What he found, however, was beyond anything he could have imagined or prepared for. The colony was gone. Every cabin stood empty, every hearth cold, and not a single soul remained. Tools lay abandoned, gardens overgrown, and signs of sudden departure were everywhere. It was as if the settlers had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the skeleton of a once thriving settlement. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the wind whispering through the trees. On a post near the central settlement, White discovered the now famous carving, CROATOAN. No other markings, no other clues, nothing to indicate whether the colonists had been forced to flee, had been taken, or had simply disappeared into the wilderness. White could find no evidence of struggle, no signs of disease, and no trace of the people he had entrusted to this land. The emptiness was overwhelming, and a chilling question hung in the air. Where had they gone? White searched the island thoroughly, following the coastline and exploring the dense forests, but each step only deepened the mystery. He sent messages to nearby native tribes, hoping to gather information, yet no one seemed to know the settlers' fate. Some whispered that the colonists had integrated with friendly tribes, while others feared a darker end, perhaps attack, starvation, or even supernatural forces at play. The psychological impact on White was immense. A man who had meticulously planned, documented, and cared for the colony was confronted with a void where his people had once lived. He returned to England haunted, carrying with him the unanswered questions and the chilling realization that his story would never provide certainty. Over the centuries, countless theories emerged. Had the settlers been killed by hostile forces? Had they relocated and assimilated into nearby tribes? Or had some other, more mysterious fate claimed them? Archaeologists and historians continue to debate, yet the story of Roanoke remains one of America's most perplexing historical enigmas. Next, we will delve into the theories surrounding what might have happened to the lost colonists, exploring starvation, relocation, native alliances, and chilling speculations that have haunted historians for centuries. For over 4 centuries, the fate of the Roanoke settlers has captivated historians, archaeologists, and mystery seekers alike. Every clue, every rumor, has been dissected, debated, and theorized upon, yet the truth remains elusive. When John White returned in 1590, all he found was a haunting emptiness and the single word CROATOAN carved into a post. What could it mean, and where had the settlers gone? One theory suggests starvation and disease. The settlers faced harsh conditions, failed crops, and limited supplies. It is possible that the colony succumbed to hunger, disease, or exposure, leaving only bones and artifacts scattered throughout the island, yet no definitive skeletal evidence has been found to confirm this grim scenario. Another theory proposes integration with Native American tribes. Some historians argue that the settlers may have sought refuge with friendly tribes on nearby islands or the mainland, blending into existing communities. Oral histories from certain tribes suggest encounters with fair-skinned strangers in the late 16th century, though these accounts remain ambiguous and contested. A more sinister possibility is hostile conflict. Could some settlers have been attacked by rival tribes or scavengers, their traces deliberately erased? White found no clear signs of struggle, yet in the chaos of a harsh wilderness, evidence could have vanished quickly. The fear of attack alone may have driven families to hide or flee under cover of darkness. Finally, some whisper of mysterious or unexplained forces. Stories of shadows in the woods, strange lights, and eerie sounds have persisted in retellings of the colony's history. Were the disappearances the result of misadventure, natural disasters, or simply the vast unknown of the New World? Some accounts describe settlers vanishing suddenly, leaving possessions behind, adding to the air of supernatural possibility. Despite centuries of investigation, archaeological digs have revealed tantalizing but inconclusive evidence. Fragments of European tools, small personal items, and the remains of structures, yet nothing that conclusively explains the mass disappearance. Every discovery seems to raise more questions than answers, deepening the enduring mystery. What is certain is that the story of Roanoke is a story of hope, fear, and the human struggle against an unpredictable world. The settlers dared to dream in the wilderness, Yet their fate remains one of the most haunting enigmas in American history. A chilling reminder of how quickly life can vanish, leaving only whispers and unanswered questions. Next, we will explore the archaeological evidence and modern discoveries and how tiny fragments of the past might finally bring us closer to understanding what really happened to the lost colony. Over the centuries, historians and archaeologists have combed the land of Roanoke Island, searching for any fragment of the lost colony. Every dig, every carefully unearthed artifact carries the hope of answering the questions that John White left behind. Where did the settlers go? What became of them? Excavations have revealed small but intriguing clues. Fragments of European pottery, pieces of tools, and remnants of structures suggest that the settlers lived in isolated clusters, moving across the island or possibly to nearby areas. These discoveries hint that the colony may not have vanished suddenly, but rather dispersed gradually, perhaps seeking safety or resources elsewhere. More compelling are the traces that indicate interaction with Native American tribes. Archaeologists have found European-style items buried alongside indigenous artifacts, suggesting cultural exchange or integration. Some speculate that settlers may have been absorbed into local communities, blending so completely that their distinct presence faded from history. Yet, without direct evidence, this remains only a plausible theory. Even with modern technology, the mystery persists. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered potential burial sites, while analysis of pollen, soil, and remains offers clues about diet, disease, and settlement patterns. Some items found on nearby islands suggest short-term habitation, hinting that small groups of settlers may have tried to survive on their own, separated from the main colony. Despite these tantalizing discoveries, no human remains definitively linked to the original settlers have been found. This lack of concrete evidence fuels speculation and adds to the haunting legend of Roanoke. Every artifact tells a story, yet the full narrative remains frustratingly out of reach. What is clear is that the lost colony is not simply a tale of disappearance. It is a story of survival, adaptation, and the unknown. Each dig, each uncovered shard of pottery or tool, reminds us of the fragility of life in an unfamiliar land and the courage it took to settle there. Yet, the ultimate fate of these settlers continues to elude us, leaving only questions and eerie possibilities. Next, we will examine the cryptic word CROATOAN in detail, exploring its possible meanings, its significance, and the chilling role it played in this enduring mystery. One of the most enduring enigmas of the Roanoke colony is a single word, carved into a post or tree: CROATOAN. When John White returned in 1590, this was the only tangible clue left behind. Its meaning and its implications remain deeply mysterious, fueling centuries of speculation and debate. Some historians argue that CROATOAN referred to a nearby island, home to the CROATOAN tribe. If true, it could suggest that the settlers had relocated there, seeking refuge with friendly natives. This theory is supported by accounts of interactions between Europeans and tribes in later years, and fragments of European-style artifacts found in the region. Could it be that the colonists survived, blending into a new community, their existence quietly absorbed into history? Others fear a darker explanation. Could CROATOAN have been a warning, a signal that something had gone terribly wrong, a final note left in desperation? White found no additional markings, no crosses or symbols indicating danger, yet the eerie isolation of the site made the word seem more ominous than helpful. The word itself became a symbol of mystery. It is simple, yet loaded with possibilities. Was it meant to guide, conceal, or communicate something we may never understand? Scholars, treasure hunters, and amateur historians alike have puzzled over it for generations. Despite exhaustive searches, no definitive evidence has been discovered linking the settlers directly to the CROATOAN tribe or any other fate. Beyond the theory of relocation, CROATOAN has inspired speculation of supernatural forces, hidden conspiracies, or even secret escapes orchestrated by the settlers. Its ambiguity embodies the chilling uncertainty that defines the story of Roanoke. Each time researchers uncover artifacts nearby, the word whispers through history, a reminder that the colony's end may never be fully known. Whatever the tea, Ruth CROATOAN stands as a haunting testament to the lost lives, dashed hopes, and unresolved fears of the first settlers of America. It is a word that has transcended centuries, inviting us to imagine the vanished colony, the families, and the children who once called Roanoke home. Next, we will explore the legacy of Roanoke, how it has influenced history, inspired countless theories, and left a chilling mark on the imagination of generations to come. The story of Roanoke is more than a tale of vanished settlers. It is a haunting reminder of human ambition, resilience, and the fragility of life in an unknown world. Over 400 years later, historians, archaeologists, and mystery seekers continue to grapple with the colony's disappearance. Every theory, every clue, and every artifact serves as a bridge between past and present, keeping the memory of the lost settlers alive. Roanoke has influenced generations of storytellers. Books, documentaries, and research papers revisit the colony, exploring possibilities that range from integration with native tribes to tragic deaths from disease or starvation. Even today, the word CROATOAN sparks imagination and fear, a symbol of an unsolved mystery that defies explanation. The colony's vanishing also serves as a cautionary tale. It reminds us that even careful planning and human ingenuity can falter against nature's unpredictability. Harsh winters, unfamiliar landscapes, and isolation challenge the settlers in ways modern society can scarcely imagine. And yet, the courage they displayed, the hope they carried across the Atlantic, remains inspiring. Modern archaeology continues to uncover traces of Roanoke, but each discovery raises as many questions as it answers. Were the settlers absorbed into local communities, disappearing from recorded history? Were they victims of a sudden calamity, leaving behind only whispers in the wind? Or does the truth remain forever hidden, a secret held by the land itself? What makes Roanoke truly remarkable is its power to captivate us centuries later. It is a story of mystery, survival, and human vulnerability. A story that forces us to imagine, to question, and to feel the lingering fear and hope of those who came before us. The lost colony may never reveal its secrets fully, but its legacy endures, echoing through time as one of America's darkest and most enigmatic chapters. Next, think about the children, families, and dreamers who vanished without a trace, leaving only a single word carved in wood and the haunting question, where did they go? That question remains unanswered, and it may forever keep the story of Roanoke alive in our minds, a chilling reminder that some mysteries were never meant to be solved.